Hello, 2360 students. I hope everyone had a great week last week. So, last week was a really big week as we were working in our Module 3 and starting our first case study project, which you had to complete a presentation based on your case study child's disability. So, this week we're going to move forward with working on the second component and project of the case study child that you were working with. So, with this module 4, it's really going to help you to be able to complete that project. So, what you're going to do is you're really going to be looking at how do you support this child? How do you support the families? So, if a child is looking, um, or the family is looking at how do we, how does the referral process work? How is the assessment and the services the child will receive? Basically, what is the process, the referral process? And that's something you as an educator should know and support the family. So the partnership you have between the families are very important, especially during this process. So once it's determined the child can receive services, there is a document or a plan, if you will, that will be created. And there's two different types. There is an IFSP and an IEP. So the difference is the age level. So if it's an IEP, that will mean that the child is school age, right? So we're talking kindergarten and up to 12th grade. If we have an IFSP, this is for early childhood. So this could be as young, say as a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. And really, that plan is to support the whole family, right? So it's individualized, yes, but it's a family support plan. And all of the services the child receives are and the requirements of their plan is provided in that document. So you're going to be learning about that. And lastly, we're really going to be looking at how universal design for learning is in really the DEC recommended practices for these environments and looking at that. So, for an overview, what you're going to be doing is you will be completing the two lessons. You will have 2 weeks to complete them, just like last time. I have provided you with textbook chapters, assigned those to you, as well as all the links and documents and things that you would need in each lesson. So, for how you're going to be assessed, you will be completing a case study transition plan and you will also be completing a discussion board for Module 4. So, the first thing I want to go to is just looking, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the lessons because this is something that you will be doing on your own. But I just kind of wanted to just let you see what our learning objectives and the content that you will be looking at. So, as I said, really our outcome is for you to be able to identify recommended practices and elements for inclusive early childhood programs. You're going to be able to demonstrate and interpret the use of screening and diagnostic instruments used with young children with developmental disabilities, and also know and understand how to work effectively with a team, a multidisciplinary team, so that way you can coordinate appropriate educational programs. And this is integrating parents, school, and any community resources. I have provided you with some questions for each lesson, some guiding questions. Please read those before you start because it's really going to see where you're heading and get you to think about these as you're going through the two lessons. Okay, so for your chapter, I have assigned the 4 chapters that you're going to be reading. Also, some links here that might help you. So, DEC, the Division of Early Childhood, they recommend some practices when we're looking at earlier intervention, right? Specifically special education. So there's a link there, and then also a link about talking how should we support the family through partnerships. So there is a video or a resource here called Connect Family Professional Partnerships that you can also look at. Now, our vocabulary here I listed. Remember, these are concepts and terms that are just going to contribute to your knowledge when we're looking specifically at the content this week. You will see them in the lessons, maybe in the links provided, as well as some of this inside of your chapters. So just be sure to look at all of those terms and become familiar with them. So you'll see here the Division of Early Childhood, their recommended practices, maybe some challenges that families are going to face, especially through the referral process, the assessment process. What are the steps of the assessment process? And then how do we identify students who maybe have special needs or, that you feel like may need to get assessed? And what does the referral process look like? So that's really what we're going to be concentrating on in the first lesson. Now, in the second lesson, we are going to look at transitions. Now, this second lesson, really pay attention to this because it goes back to universal design for learning, but it talks about program transitions. And this is going to be a big part of what you're going to be doing in the second case study project for your homework. So, really hone in on this lesson and be able to look at, well, what are program transitions? If I'm receiving the child, what am I supposed to do? How do I support the sending team? What are they supposed to be providing me with? Right. So, really, this lesson is important because it's going to help support you in your case study project. It also talks about the Division for Early Childhood and what are their recommended practices. We're really honing in on two key practices of how you support children through transition experiences, right? So you support them and their families. Okay, and then again, the Division of Early Child for Early Childhood. What are their recommended practices? Now, when we're looking at these recommended practices, we're really looking at universal design for learning. And we're specifically honing in on the environment. The environment is so important because when we're talking about the child in the environment supports the child as well. So we look at several factors, right? How do we promote access? How do we make sure children are included? How do you set the room up? What does your schedule look like? What would be appropriate practices? How do I create the best environment that's beneficial for all students? Really looking at universal design for learning when we're talking about environment. Now, here it talks about what is actually universal design for learning. What is meant by that when we say that? And what are some recommended practices, right? So we talked about the environment. We have what we call a physical principle and educational application. So in the classroom, when we're looking at education, how do we apply it, right, in terms of environment? And it even kind of gives you a visual here. It lets you see, right? When we're thinking about universal design, we're looking at inclusivity, we're looking at is it accessible, inclusive, and is it usable, right? So those are what we really look at when we're talking about universal design for learning. And what does that look like in education, right? As an educator, what does that mean? There is a checklist here for you. Please look at that. The checklist is really going to help you look at the three environments, right? So we look at the physical, the social, and temporal. And in your field work that you're going to do for inclusive practices, you're going to be seeing this checklist again. You're going to be seeing this in your field work. Or if you've already started the field work, then you should be familiar with the universal design for learning. So now we're going to get to the assignments. So as I mentioned, you will have two activities in your quiz. So you will complete your Module 4 quiz, you will have a discussion activity, and then you will have your case study work. So your case study work we'll get to in just a minute, but I wanted to go over your discussion activity. So, looking back at the first lesson, when we're talking about partnership with families, you really have to put yourself in the parent's shoes. How would it feel if I was raising a child who had special needs? So, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the Connect module, Family Professional Partnerships, and I want you to listen to these 5 video clips, right? So, these are phone interviews who really have the expertise of working with family members and practitioners um, with children who have special needs. I also included the transcript here. If you're more of a read write type of person, then you may find that more helpful than listen to the audio. There is a activity form, so there's a document here that you're going to be typing inside of. So for each of these 5 clips, I want you to identify at least 2 suggestions that you would incorporate into your own family oriented practices. So that would be 10 practices, 10 suggestions altogether. and you're going to write a reflection. So you're going to write which of these suggestions particularly spoke to you. Why? Do you feel that you could be competent in implementing suggestions, or would you need guidance? What kind of guidance? What specific skills might you want to improve on? Um, when you're looking at as an educator, when you're working with families, what would you want to improve on? And what do you see as challenges or rewards of building a partnership with families of children with disabilities? So, do you feel that these would differ from working with families or other students? And in what way, right? So, I'm going to open up this document so you can see what it looks like. So, this is what you will be submitting, right? Give it a second to load. Okay. So you'll see here, there's no need for you to create a new Word document. You can type directly in here. So remember, there's two sections to this discussion. The first one is you're going to have to tell me from each audio clip or reading the transcript, which of the two suggestions would you feel you can incorporate into your own practices. And you're going to do two for each person. And then down here, you're going to write your reflection, right? And in your reflection, you're answering these three prompts. And then that will be what you're going to turn in. So the second part of your assignment is really going to be your case study work. So we're going to look at that. So the first part that you did last week was really looking at how you researched and all the information you found out about that child's disability, right? Their need. So now that you're familiar with that child's case, you're familiar with their disability, you know all you know about it. Now you're really going to step into this role. You are going to be receiving a child. So you're going to support them in this transition. So that's why it's called a transition plan. It's the process of a period of changing from one program to another. So, your role in this assignment is to act as part of this transition planning team, right? So, we have a team, we have the sending team and the receiving team. And what your goal is you're going to be able to look at that child's specific needs, right? So, you're going to still use the same child, and you are going to be receiving that child. So, what's important information? What's the knowledge that I need to have? What can I bring to support this transition? How can I be a part of this team? You're going to develop a plan that's really going to help involve all parties. So, this is going to be the family, you're involving the child, you're going to involve the team that's sending the child, and then whoever's on your receiving team. Okay, so you're going to have build a relationship with them. So you have to think about how I'm going to support them. So here's the things that you have to do. First, you're going to do is you're going to set goals and identify challenges. Excuse me. So you're going to think about, as a receiving team, what kind of goals do we need to set for the child? What kind of challenges might arise? So remember, this is a new location. You can think about things as, would there be demands placed on the family? What would the transportation look like? Is there increased class size? Are there hours of the program? Is that going to be an issue? I mean, any challenges that come up. Maybe you don't have enough staff members who are trained with this child's specific need. Um, so remember, these are not the child's IFSP IEP goals. Rather, these are the goals that the team writes, right, to transition, to change into your program, okay, to make it successful. So, in other words, these goals should be achievable during this transition period. Now, remember, transition period can be all the way up to 2 months before the change starts. So, 2 months before the child leaves, and then weeks after they get into the new setting. So it can last a little while. And remember, when you're setting these goals for the child, you really need to make sure that they're broad, right? So you have enough activities that you would be able to reach the goal. Okay, so that's the first thing is setting your goals and challenges. The next step is really planning for the transition. So you're going to have a series of questions, 3, 4, and 5, to really make clear that what's the sending team going to do, the family team going to do, and what am I as the receiving program going to do to make this transition seamless, right? And remember, when you're responding to these questions 3, 4, and 5 on the document, which I'll pull up in a minute, just make sure that you are thorough with a few sentences, um, and make sure that what you're putting there is specific to your case study child, right? So you can go back and look at your case study child, and look at them if you have trouble. The next two charts are really going to help you meet the goals, right? So, what are the activities that you will be giving to the child? So, before they come to you and start the program, what kind of activities do they need? What activities will take place after the child is in your new program? And really consider the needs of the child. So, go back to the case study um, plan that I gave you in the very beginning and read about the family. Read about who's do they have siblings, how many in their family, because this stuff is going to help you consider the needs of that specific family. Looking at the program, looking at the programming staff, right? What kind of activities are going to help not only the family, but the child and you as well. So, whenever you have any plan, you have to see if it's working. So, that's called evaluating the plan to see if you need to make some adjustments. This is part of it. So, that's going to be the final section of the plan. So, you have to follow up and do an evaluation procedure. Okay. So, you have to follow up on how the family is adjusting, how the child's adjusting, and how is the program adjusting, right? We're going to evaluate the plan, the goals, and the process and see it and the activities that we gave them to see if there's anything we need to do. Okay. So remember, this is not a plan for the academic portion, right? The IEP progress. This is really just a transition plan to help the child become more comfortable with where they are in their surroundings and supporting them and developing those supportive relationships, right? So that way we can meet the outcomes in the program later on. Okay. So I have two links here. You'll see there is a transition planning form, and then there's another one here, and this just giving you more explanation of some of those transition terms, right? That's making connection to the module, the lesson two. Okay. This form here, the first one, is the actual form that will be submitted to Dropbox, and it's labeled transition plan. Okay. I also included a graded rubric here for you to look at. Okay, so I want to pull up the transition plan. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put the child's name, description of the transition that's occurring. So that means that they're coming to your school. Now, here's where we said you have to list all the essential members of the team. Now, a lot of this information you're going to be getting, right, from your lesson, right? Your lesson in 4.2, and you're also going to be getting it from your actual case study overview of your student, right? So, who are the essential members of the transition team? Well, a lot of this is listed in the lesson 4.2, right? What's their role? So, what is their role? What are they bringing to the planning team? The second is listing the goals that you have for the child. Now, these goals have to be broad and you have to list three of them. So, you're going to list three goals and then what would be the possible challenge of those goals, right? So I don't want any more than three. And you're going to get this information, right, from your case study child's overview. A lot of it. A lot of that because it talks to you about what kind of challenges they're already having. So, what do you think the goal would be? So, looking at those challenges, what would be the goal and what kind of challenges could arise? The next section is answering these three questions that we talked about, right? With a few sentences to answer. So they have to be brief. I don't want more than 2 to 3, okay? Because I'm not asking you to do a paragraph. You're just being very brief. And you're just getting this information, from the lesson that you did. What role does the sending program have in this transition? What role does the parents and family play? What role do you as a receiving team play in this transition? And then here, is going to be the activities, right? So we want to make sure we have an activities that meets the child's goals of making it a seamless transition. So what would you do? So if the child has trouble with transitions like new settings, or maybe they don't get along with others, right? We would need to make sure that be one of the goals. Okay. So what would support it? What would be the activity description? what person's responsible. Um, so it needs to be meaningful. Okay, so remember, you have to pick 3 activities before the child sends. So maybe you want the child to visit the school, visit you, or maybe have a play date with some of the other students, right? That could be an activity that you have them do so they can become familiar with the school and they won't become scared or afraid because it's a new place or a new setting. Maybe you want them to play with their friends and get to know people. So maybe that you do a play date. So these are things they could do before the child starts the program. Maybe you have meet the teachers night, right? So that could be 3 activities before the child starts, and then you need to do 3 activities once your child is in your classroom. And the last one is you have to develop an evaluation. Okay, so this is the to see if you're meeting your goals. How are you going to determine if the goals listed in the charts above are completed and successful? So you would state that, how you would do that, right? And again, the 4.2 lesson is really going to help you because it talks about evaluation and the procedure of how you evaluate to make sure you accomplish your goals. So this is what you will be submitting. Okay, so you will have your quiz, module 4 quiz, you have your transition plan for your case study child, and then you have your discussion. Now, as always, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to help you any way I can. Just make sure that you reach out if you are confused about any portion of the transition plan, or maybe you had a question about the discussion. I'll be more than happy to help you. And remember, you have to submit this to Dropbox, okay? All right, guys, until next time, take care.